Hello, Rob from Fountain Pen Journey with another pen review. Now, this pen, you're going to have to watch the whole video because I've got so many good things and bad things to say about this pen. If you're in the market for this pen, this is the Moonman T1, you need to watch this video before you make a purchase because there are some decisions that you might need to make. Excuse me. Still struggling with a dry atmosphere here. The Moonman T1, for me, just look at it. Whether you're sold on this design or not is going to be completely up to you. And I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, so you don't have to skip to the end of the video. Do I recommend this pen? It's not a thumbs up, it's not a thumbs down. It's more of a thumbs up than a thumbs down, but you'll have to keep watching to find out why and work out for yourself whether this is the sort of pen that you want to buy. So, the Moonman T1, it's available in 4 different colours. I didn't love the pen enough when I saw it to want to purchase all 4 colours, and particularly not at the price point, because these pens cost about £22–23, including postage from China, which is a bit more expensive for a Moonman pen. It's certainly not got the materials that you might find in the Moonman M600S. It's a piston filler with a metal cap. And I don't know what it is. I'm not a fan of mixed material pens. Now, when I say mixed materials, I'm talking metal caps, plastic or acrylic bodies. I just don't think it works. I want a pen that's one or the other, not something where there's both. But Moonman have been very clever, and I'll talk about the parts of the pen and those design elements which actually make this pen work, even though I'm not quite happy with it aesthetically. So anyway, the 4 variations. This is the green variation, and it's a sort of teal green, pale teal green. There is a blue version, which is a very metallic blue looking cap and also piston filling mechanism, which is, in my view, too similar to the Delight Classic Alpha Blue, which I bought recently and was in a pen mail video just before Christmas in 2019. So head back through my videos if you want to see that colour, because it looks identical. There is a grey version. The grey version is metal, but it looked a bit plasticky. The grey actually looked a bit plasticky. And there is also a red version, which in my view looked a little bit too pink to be red. So that didn't jump out, so I bought the green version. And the green version, yeah, it looks nice. It does have Moonman. I can't tell whether this, I think, is painted or printed on there, so that has got the potential to rub off. I'll cover the parts of the pen. We'll take the cap off in a minute. There is the Moonman logo in metal on top. The cap is metal. It's got these facets on there. We have nothing else on there. There is no clip, but fortunately, because of these facets, it doesn't roll. But it's back weighted, so it doesn't sit flat on the desk. It sort of wobbles a bit. It's not a roller, so obviously on a sloping surface it will roll easily, but these facets don't actually do anything. You would have thought that they would hold the pen flat on the surface, but they don't, and this is quite a big cap. But the back weight of the pen actually raises the facets off the surface, so it rests on the edge of the cap, which is of course beveled, as you can see down here. So there is a slight, I don't know what you want to call it, taper there. Then we have the straight facets down to another beveled, tapered bit at the bottom of the cap. Nothing else going on the cap. Clear acrylic barrel which houses the ink reservoir and the piston filling mechanism. Piston filling mechanism is, it's really hard to tell. It is metal, which I think is the problem, where it's creating this back weight to the pen where it won't lie flat. So anyway, that's a bit of a aside, nothing to worry about, because at least it is metal. It's not some cheap plastic that they've inserted on top of the filling system. Bottom end is just domed, and it's nice to see that the whole thing matches, and all the colour variants do have matching piston filling mechanisms and turning knobs and caps. So if I unscrew this cap, we'll do the turns to see how many turns this takes. 1, 2. It's about 2 3/4 turns. Now inside this cap doesn't appear to be a liner, but I've had no issues with the nib feed, whatever, drying out. It does write, even if you pick it up after a couple of days, 3 or 4 days of non-use, no problem there. And the section. Now, this is where I believe the section is metal. And I was a bit concerned about these threads because they are going into this black plastic insert in the cap. So metal on plastic, but it is smooth, no issues there. It's okay. I may be tempted to put some silicone grease on the inside of these threads just to make it smoother and just to prevent any excess wear, because I suspect that there could be some wear over time. It caps firmly, you know, no issues there. It's not going to unscrew, but you know, you've got metal on plastic. I'm never that much of a fan of capping systems like that. The nib is a Moonman steel nib, silver coloured, and the nib is fine. It does write quite broadly for a fine, as we'll see in the writing sample. The section is also this, it's matte, but it is a little bit slippery. It's quite a decent length. I mean, you can hold this quite comfortably, and you can just about feel the threads, which are a bit, I wouldn't say they're coarse, but they are a little bit bulky. They're thicker threads than you often find, and you can just feel those under your thumb at this point here, but not an issue. You can hold it, the threads aren't a problem. And to be honest, I think the threads actually aid your grip, because this section is, in my view, a little bit slippery. They've made it matte, but it's still slippery, and in my personal opinion, if this had been a smoother section, it might not have actually been as slippery, it might have provided more grip, but this feels slippery. But at least the matching cap and piston turning knob, they're all matte finishes, so they all match each other, which is good. The metal section is hard to tell how this is connected, but it is glued in or secured in there to the acrylic, which houses the barrel houses the ink reservoir and the piston turning knob and filling system. So this knob turns. Now, I'm not going to do it because I've already made this mistake once. The piston turning knob does not lock in place, so it's very easy to turn this by mistake if you fiddle with the pen and expel ink out into the cap. Worst of all, now this is in my view a real letdown, the cap does post. I'll just talk about the length of the pen first. Really good length, really nice, decent length, not too big, not too small, fits well in the hand. And capping it, now the cap doesn't do much, but it does, it actually goes onto the piston filling knob. It doesn't go far enough down to the barrel, and you end up with quite a long pen, which is actually quite a decent thing. You would have thought that this big, fairly heavy cap would backweight the pen, but it doesn't. It really does not backweight the pen too much. So if you wanted to, you've got quite a decent oversized long pen. But this cap, because it actually secures onto the piston turning knob, the filling system, I'll take that off. Any turn, and it doesn't take a lot, any turn of the cap when it's posted will expel ink all over the place. So I really, really strongly advise, do not write with this pen posted, because you're likely to end up just slightly turning the cap and it rotates the knob and ink's going to be all over the place. So not advisable. Let's compare it lengthwise with the TWSBI Eco T, and as you can see, they are incredibly similar in length. The TWSBI Eco T is maybe a couple of millimeters longer when it's capped, and uncapped the TWSBI is obviously quite, let's just match these up, quite a bit, over ½ centimetre longer. Moonman's just rolling away there. See, this is another problem. If you post it, the facets on the cap don't actually do anything. So the pen can roll because it's once again sitting on these beveled bit, these chamfered edges. And I shall have to remove the cap again without spilling ink everywhere. So there are the parts of the pen and one or two of the design issues. Let's see how it writes. Now, I've always been very happy with Moonman pens. They write well. I very, very rarely, if ever, have to do any nib adjustments. As I said, this is a fine steel nib. So the Moonman T1. Very, very nice, smooth nib. And it lays down ink well enough. I've had no problems. I mean, this is a fine, and I'm never a fine nib person. Some of my viewers are into Japanese fountain pens. Quite honestly, I'm not a fan of fine nibs, and I think, you know, the medium nibs, broad nibs, they're my sort of nibs, really. But I do like decent fine nibs, and this fine nib really, really does a good job. I mean, it lays down a lot of ink, and I would say that for a fine nib, and specifically with Moonman nibs, I have had quite a few Moonman fine nibs which have been really, really quite fine. This does feel broader. It certainly does feel more like a fine medium, and it lays down ink so well. I did have to match this ink to the pen, obviously, and I'll just write down the ink for you, which off the top of my head, it's a diamine ink, and this is cool green, which is a nice sort of, I'd say a fairly teal green ink, pale teal. So there we have it, the Moonman T1. Now, do I recommend this? It's difficult for me. If you've watched this video in full, then you might have already made up your mind either way, but there are elements which I'm really happy with and some elements which I'm really not happy with. Aesthetically, I don't have a pen which is, you know, like this, so it was a good purchase from that point of view. It holds a lot of ink. The nib is very, very smooth. I mean, it really is. It's such a good nib, and for a fine nib, I mean, it really is really, really nice to write with. You can even squeeze out a little bit, even though it's not a flex nib. Reverse writing, if you're interested, it's actually really, really good. Look at that. But interestingly, even with reverse writing, I'd say that's a fine. So, you know, you've got quite a versatile pen. You've got a decent amount of ink in this piston filling system, and it writes really well. If you like the colour and you like the design, it's a great pen. If you want to post it, it's not a great pen. It's going to be a disaster. If you're not happy with the plastic on the metal section, the threads, it's going to be, you know, one of those things. Fortunately, I'll just point out, the cap, when it's on its own, doesn't roll because the facets actually work. Which also sort of makes me think, you know, there's a few issues with the facets not really doing the job for a roll stop. The pen sort of balances and it's back heavy when it's capped, and of course the piston filling knob not locking in place for a pen which has a piston filling system is a bit of it's one of those things that I'm not always happy with. I know there's plenty of piston filling pens out there where the piston filling knob, you know, you can turn it and it does expel ink, but this doesn't lock in place or anything. I mean, you can't turn it with light finger pressure, but it doesn't take a lot to turn it. And certainly, if you post this pen and the cap fits onto this bit, you know, it grips it well, doesn't go any further down towards the barrel, and that cap will, in writing, turn the piston knob. So it's a bit of an issue. But I wouldn't post this pen because for me, it's a good, comfortable length. So it's kind of over to you guys. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Moonman T1. Would you buy it? Because I'm kind of on the fence with this. I like my reviews to be simple, no nonsense reviews, you know, bare bones, nothing fancy, no fancy editing, none of that. You know, you want to see the pens, you want to see the inks, and sometimes you just got to go, you know what, I'm not sure about this pen. It's not for everybody. Some people will be absolutely fine with it and love it. For me, it's a great pen because it writes well and it's got a wonderful, great, smooth nib. Even for a fine, it suits me because it's slightly broader. And it's a good all-round pen from that point of view. Reverse writing is absolutely great. Don't often get that with a nib. So, I mean, as you can see, the Moonman T1 is kind of, it's towards a thumbs up from me, but not quite. And whether you like the look of this pen, you know, let me know in the comments what you think. It's certainly not something I would recommend everybody goes out and buys just because it writes well and it's, you know, it's one of those things. Personal choice, that's what it's down to. So I hope you found that this video was useful and informative. There will be more. I have great plans for 2019. My channel will always concentrate on the low-end pens from wherever they come from, China, India, wherever they are. So that's not going to change. I'm not going to suddenly jump on the you know, Grail pen bandwagon, by any stretch of the imagination. And I'll always keep it no nonsense and straightforward, so that, you know, people can go, yeah, that pen writes well, or that pen doesn't. So that's my plan for 2020. Did I say 2019 earlier? I probably did. I'm still stuck in that mindset, even though 2019 already seems like ages ago. So there we go, Moonman T1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I shall see you next time. Bye.